Welcome to Firecat First Friday in December. It is December already, folks. Louise, Craig, and I had given a talk at Big Design 2021 where we shared a list that Louise started months ago. Louise Craig, my dear friend, is the experience architect for the city of San Antonio. And she has been charged with making a UX program on top of trying to do UX activities for the city and all the user research and mentoring people to do UX. So she evolved this strategy, which all of us have used, I'm sure. We call it adopt and adapt. So rather than invent stuff from scratch, she's been just finding great resources for UX on the web and then introducing them to the folks that work at the city and have some kind of UX role. So she's got amassed this wonderful list. And so we are going to share that with you today. And it has been iterated. So I'll send out a follow-up post on Firecat First Friday with the updated list on it. But without further ado, and start the video. And after the video, it lasts about 15 minutes. Louise and I will do live Q&A and answer your questions and let you tell us about the UX resources that aren't yet on the list. And let's keep making this list amazing. Let's set the context for how you came to create this resource list. Louise, when you joined the city of San Antonio, you were one of the first UXers there, right?
Right, pretty much. It was mostly a developer culture. And of course, every city is a complex bureaucracy with multiple departments.
So where'd you start?
I did what I'd been doing at HEB and at USAA as a consultant and introduced simple tools for my team, like flow diagrams, wireframes, personas, and scenarios. They weren't using those much at the time.
So you were teaching the people you worked with?
Yes, as much as possible. And we began to see success and get traction. But I was just one person, and they thought all the UX stuff was just me being obsessive.
Except your own boss, he was a smart guy, and he saw what you were doing was valuable.
Right, that's right. He was our first big champion of UX, and he's an important champion still. He's the CTO now of the city.
Kevin Goodwin, right?
Right.
Okay, and then our friend from USAA, Craig Hopkins, was hired as CIO. At USAA, they have a pretty well-developed human-centered design culture.
Right. And Craig's vision is to move the city to that customer-centered culture. He's created an executive level customer experience group, a CXG, and that includes an assistant city manager and several directors. And we're patterning UX throughout the city.
That's great. And you've been elevated to experience architect for the city of San Antonio. That's an amazing opportunity.
Right, it is, and I'm excited about it, but it's also a be careful what you wish for time, because now my challenge is to scale UX throughout the city while still training and mentoring not just UXers and designers, but also a lot of other people whose decisions impact the experience. And they may also fulfill a UX role on some projects.
Right. So you began this search for principles and frameworks and structures that you could pattern that program on, correct?
Absolutely, because it's a lot of work to do, and why start from scratch? So it turns out there's a lot of them, and we started, once I started finding them, I thought, okay, let's adopt and adapt these to the city. So, and many of them are created by the US government, so they're in the public domain, but there's some great commercial resources out there too.
Awesome. Well, let's dig into your list. Give us the tour.
Great, let's go. So come into here in governance, of course, with the CXG group. We started looking at what governance should be and that type of thing. So measurably improve your relationship with the customer. This was a great place to start. It's by GSA, and it's part of the USDA, and then of course in public domain. So let's take a quick look at that. And it's a great article, why agencies need CXU expertise, helps you justify. They've got some case studies here. So it's a great place to get going. So the next one is from that same organization, the Customer Experience Center of Excellence. And they have a playbook. So the playbook is great because it has 13 plays. It gets you going, and here's a couple of the different plays. And when you go ahead and get into the play, they've got a great the introduction, key questions to ask, a checklist, and you can keep going. And sometimes they've got tools and how to engage. So it really gets you started on how you might do this program. So that was the playbook. You notice we've got little red arrows at the ones we're showing today. So you can get, when you get the resource list, you'll know which ones we actually showed. So the next I want to show and share is 18F. 18F is a government consulting agency that was formed in 2017, I think, or no, 2014. And they work with government agencies to, here it says right here, partner with agencies to help you build and buy exceptional digital services. So what you find here is things like how somebody who is UX centered might work, what their methods are and that type of thing. So that could be really helpful as you're trying to form a program. And 18F has a lot. We'll be going back to 18F because they have so many resources. But once you've thought maybe about your program, you might want to think about your team. And there are some great resources out for teams. And here's where I'm heading to commercial with NNG. So let's take a look at that. And of course, NNG is the Nielsen Norman Group. Tons of resources, both free and paid for, training, all kinds of stuff. But the state of the design teams. So one thing we're starting to talk about at the city is a design ops, a design team, as opposed to having designers embedded in different places. So this is a survey. So if you need some data to support what you're trying to propose, you can get in here and find out what's happening. Design organizations, are they centralized, decentralized, or hybrid, which is something I was looking for. How do we organize the team, the structure? So great resource from Norman Nielsen Group.
Size of team, that's something that we often have to cope with, is arguing for people who do UX and only UX.
Right, exactly. And the next one we'll just jump to right here is Design Ops 101. This is a great introduction if you haven't dived into this topic, but also there's a document here I just love, and the Design Ops landscape. So this talks about how we work together, how we get work done, and how our work creates impact. So we're going to head in now to the culture section. So when you're bringing user-centered design, that outside in approach to a culture, you're going to have culture change. Any organization will. So how do we start bringing in the culture? And as Susan will tell us, the part of it's about talking the business language. So this is their site. We're in the thinking section and we're in the favorites. And there are 6 different calculators here all set up for you. Let's jump into one just real quick. What they do is they show you, they're a UX firm, so they're going to show you the method and what they did. They give you an example, and then down here you come in and you start filling in your calculator. So number of calls, and what do you want to reduce the call volume by 10%? And you just start filling this out, and they're going to give you your ROI.
What I love about this one is that it preps you, even if you don't use the calculator with the sponsor of your project, it's giving you great hints into what questions you need to be asking a sponsor who can't quite articulate the vision, it helps them identify the key metrics that any one project is trying to move.
So once again, this is that GSA, USDA, and this is the end result of what they did of their ecosystem. But they also put up there all the research they did, and they put up templates, and it's a great resource. So what they did is they took a look at all their personas, and they had, I think, 900 something, and they kept condensing them down till they got to 10 archetypes. And then they looked at how those archetypes interacted with locations. And then the little circles here are different departments that interact at that location. And when I saw this, I went, that's what we need at the city, because everyone's acting in their silo, and they were sharing customers, but sometimes they don't think, they think about when they're their customer and how they serve them, instead of how can we serve the resident and their task and what their intent is.
One of our favorite techniques as a consultancy is to give the organization one visual that helps everybody be on the same page. And this ecosystem is not just a great example visual, but the fact that they walk you through exactly all the different steps to get there is just amazing.
Yeah. So another one of your, when we talk about the culture, we want to think about our allies. One of our biggest pain points when I was on the web team was content, because content gets created in their silo. It gets, there's an approval process they're going through internally with the department, and the director or whoever is the decision maker finally says, yes, go ahead and publish that on the web. They would bring it to the web team, and we go, whoa, wait a minute, this is, you know, this is a PhD level reading level.
It's
this
full
is
of jargon.
Full of jargon.
It's assuming a lot of knowledge that regular people don't have. All the
Right.
all the usual suspects, right?
Right. This is a book. It's not bulletized. And we would start pushing back, right? And be like, no, I've already worked on this too long, or I'm not going to take that back to the director.
Or legal approved it.
Yes, yes. Or they got it from another government agency that hasn't heard about plain language yet. So all of those challenges. So what I liked about this one from 18F is it's pretty straightforward. So don't, when you get in here, remember to look up here, because they've got the a primary navigation here, and then you can come in and say, so they give you some ideas: address the user, avoid duplication, be concise, gather feedback, etc. And you can click in on any one of these things. And
all the stuff you want your content people to know. You don't have to write it up. It's right here.
It's right here. Adopt it, and if you need, add some things to it and adapt it. But and this is all, like I said, public domain, so are free to use, or at the most, there's a couple that have a Creative Commons license for you to share. But we're going to head into inclusion, and there's so much good stuff here. Be sure you look at this University of Cambridge Inclusive Toolkit as well. Pretty amazing. But I want to share this one, the accessibility for teams. Somebody's eating the UX dog food here. So, because what they did is they took accessibility and refined it for the intended customer, in this case, the intended UX people or team that needs to do it. So you have accessibility for product, for content people, for UX people, for design people, and for front end people. So if you get in here, you click on one of these and you get into basics and diverse users. And so it gets them into thinking about the UX. And if we go into content, we're going to see more, and it changes for the audience. So this is a wonderful resource if you're trying to get people started on accessibility. And as Susan has warned me, stop fire hosing people.
And this is a good way to do it, because you're just giving them the part that's relevant to their role.
Right. Let's head in to the UX project resources. So let's take a look at this checklist of requirements. This, once again, GSA, that's really the parent organization. But Digital Gov, oh, so many resources there, it will make your mind spin. So Digital Gov, and go to this resource tab, is where you find these things, and it's a long list of links. But this checklist is requirements for federal websites and digital services. And they get into a little bit of why, and then they go into these topics, and you can see all the topics over here on the right, from accessibility to analytics to copyright, customer experience, design, domains, governance, mobile, multilingual. So I took this, I got inspired by this list, and I've already adopted and adapted. So I'm creating our own list, and what it has is the domains, what's the link to the policy if we have one, or a link to the standard if it's a standard, and a link to who's responsible, and then a link to how to make the request or how to interact. So think of this as your you don't have somebody who's been for us, I don't have someone who's been in the city for 10 years to know all this. So I give them the checklist and say, take a look at all these things before you start your project. The US Web Design System, another government group, has their design principles listed here. So I showed the design ones. There's digital principles as well, which I think are, great too. And they even list government resources, non-government, and then practical actions around each of these principles and key considerations. So that's really helpful in breaking it down and understanding it and teaching people.
It's great to start with why.
Yes, because I think that's a lot of times, especially in government, we don't always get the why. And having the why helps you make better decisions, and understand why we're doing this.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So this is their design system for federal government. They do have a showcase, so you can see who's been using it. And you can see, even if it's a design system, how different, people can, how customized they can make their sites look. You can also notice, become a part of the community. I have a Slack community, etc. GitHub, reach the team. I've emailed them, they've answered. So great resource. When you come in here and look at their design system, you can go deeper into, say, components. Oh, I'm sorry, that's fine. Components, and you can go right into, we're just taking a look at accordions. They show you borderless, border, we're all familiar with these things, but here's a resource for you that you can use. And this is the one, they actually have the whole thing on GitHub, so you can download it. We all need tools, and sometimes we can afford tools, and sometimes we need free tools. So here's a great resource that not only lists the tools, and this is a commercial resource, but lists the tools, ratings, what platform they're on, cost, and then a couple of other comments about the tool. So pretty cool. So let's head into the project level resources. So when
these
we look
would be the things that you're equipping a project team with, correct? You want to give them, we're trying not to fire hose these people. So a lot of the program stuff, that's for Louise, is going to use that to pattern her program on. She's not going to share all that with everybody. But when you get to a project team, now we're getting down to where the rubber meets the road, right?
Right, exactly. How can we help them do their job? How can we help them if they're fulfilling that UX role? And then how can I support my UX practitioners, so people who've been trained or certified, to help them? This first resource is a government free resource that is really a design sprint. They call it Discovery Sprint Guide. But what the sprint is, how to do it, preparing for it. So if you need a totally free resource, here's one that takes you through it. Usability Starter Kit is another resource here on Digital Gov. And what they do is, we're into the usability section for, and of course, some people are using words, terms interchangeably, UX, usability, CX. We all know there's sometimes tighter definitions, but anyway. So they have tools and templates here, and they go into, presentation, testing, focus groups, expert evaluation. So if you need a worksheet or a template for how to do an expert evaluation consistently or with multiple teams, which we have a few people doing this now, personas, accessibility, usability, and procurement if you're a government organization, or even if you're trying to just do your own, there's some statement of works here for different types of things that might help you. And of course, methods help us do the work and you investigate and actually in other ways. So I'm going to go in here to 18F again. So, and what they've done and what several other places have done, of course, is divide these things into methods that are great for discovery, for deciding, for making, for validating. And I see this also at another commercial resource that started in government, but anybody can use it, as Luna Workplace. They're really a fantastic resource. It is a paid resource. And they do the same thing of dividing them into what are some of the methods best for. And of course they cross over, but so let's take a look in here. Look at the 5 whys and the method. So we get a beautiful card here. You can print this card. They have the what, the why, how to do it, and any additional resources. And then for this of course excites me, consideration for use in government. So that gives me a little extra. And of course you can get in here and look at all of their different, let's go into personas, right? So how do you do it? And once again, examples, additional, etc. So really beautiful resource on methods. You know, it's not ideal to have people fulfilling a UX role that haven't been deeply trained or have lots of experience. But if we can do a 25% better, 50% better, we're moving. And that's where we need to be right now, is moving toward improvement.
Yep.
So,
and you're changing the culture.
There we go.
The slow process. It's slow and steady.
Right. So there's the resources.
All right, there's the resource list. This has been fantastic. We are going to share the resource list with you. I'll put the link up on the video, and we are going to be excited to talk to you about all this and answer your questions and hear your ideas. So at this point, let's open it up for questions. If you guys have questions, or if you want to see one of those again, Louise can pull up the list and talk through a place where you were really interested, but we didn't really go into enough detail. And Chris, do you mind helping us bring the folks back on stage with me so that they can, we're going to allow you to come back as a panelist if you want to chat. If you don't, you feel free to stay off camera.
What Susan didn't mention is one of the reasons for the videos, because there's so many resources and so much, we had so much fun doing it that we kept running long in our presentation. So this is a way to keep us on track and not dive deeper into the resources, especially as I find more, I get excited. Oh, look at this new one. So lots going on there.
And if you have favorite resources that you use that we didn't have in the list, we would love to have them. We want this to be a community resource that just continues to grow.
What's interesting as you're finding that, Susan, I'll just talk about, so one of the things I went over was some principles, and this started with the CTO. He had sent me something from Barcelona, which was a development principle, or principles to follow. And then I started looking and finding lots more people doing principles and putting them out there. And then I kind of brought things together. And then I got an email from him the other day showing he'd found one. I'd found design principles for Gov UK, but then I found service design principles. And then now they've got design principles, which are really great and condensed into 10. And he's, did you look at these or consider or already take them off the list? So we're doing the same thing now. We're finding what works and what's close to what we want to start with, adopting it and adapting it. So that continues to happen.
Oh, I'm not sharing all of this stuff. Let's see. Go back to sharing stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's one of them, Susan.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little more cagey with my share screen because I have a bad habit of not maximizing, but we'll do that. So now if I click this, are you seeing the target Gov UK? Okay, so
Yeah.
here's the big set from the UK. So our first round of resources, we had a lot of US resources. Now we're getting them from all over the place.
Right, right. And the principles, especially, I'm seeing there's actually an organization on principles and things like that, if you look at the list. But the UK, of course, they're way ahead and taking a massive amount of government websites. It was thousands of websites and trying to bring it all in together. Right now at the city, we're talking about one mission, one site. We have over 200 sites for different reasons, special initiatives, the 40 departments, sub areas in the departments, because some departments have a lot of topics they deal with. And it's a lot for people to get through. It's like taking them into a room with 200 file cabinets and say, good luck. Once you get to the file cabinet you want, you're probably going to find stuff. So one mission, one site, how can we get there? And one of my favorites, when you look at this list of what UK has gone down to, of course, we all know start with user needs, great. And that type of thing in here, but there's one about simple. Can you make it just a little bigger, Susan? I'm on my smaller screen. So this is for everyone. That's another one.
Do the hard work to make it simple.
Do the hard work to make it simple, not just make it simple, because that's been out there before, but do the hard work to make it simple. And trying to get that across sometimes it has been a little frustrating. Because it takes a lot more work to make it simple. So I really liked seeing that. And you can see they go into a little detail here and whys and how to maybe get started. So that's pretty great. So that was one that stood out with me with this UK resource.
Okay, let me go back to, so that was the first new one. And then you added these three.
Right. And they're from the one, let's see, the 33 activity ideas for UX workshops. That's kind of fun because, sometimes, and these are a mix to me of methods and activities. So when you start looking through here, but they do have them grouped by icebreakers and, generating ideas.
I want to know what Zombie Cats is right now.
Okay, check it out. Let's check it out. So,
two things they have in common. Oh, it's a name of a team. You get to name your team.
Name your team. Okay. So, but sometimes when you're trying to put something together, especially on short notice, this could be a great way to say, okay, we're going to do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. So, and that's one of the things I'm still trying to convey is the mantra of it depends, and we're not going to get there in the beginning. So that's why I'm still trying to do what Susan and I have talked a little bit about an MVE, a minimum viable experience, and what deliverables should we set up to say, at the minimum, we must do this type of documentation, activity, or deliverable to keep projects on the right track, because we don't have enough people to put on every project or every enhancement that's happening, but to get some thought about UX happening and get it into the DNA of COSA, where we've been working hard in the past couple of years to get security into DNA, and now data is up at bat, and UX is in the lineup. So
that's nice. And then observation.
Right. In this article, I do these things we have what we call JO4. Craig named it from some military thing, I'm sure, but it's a kind of a quick, everyone in IT should attend, but maybe can't. But so it's a lot of IT people attending every Wednesday for a 30-minute to 45-minute session to just talk about what's happening, talk about anything coming up. And what I've done is started introducing a segment that is called Moments That Matter. So like, how have curb cuts affected other things, right? How does accessibility spread and make it better for everyone? That was my first moment that mattered. And so things like that. And one of the things I was talking about recently is I keep telling people we need to ask the user, we need to ask the user. And they're taking it literally, ask the user. Well, if we ask, and Henry Ford's old, well-used thing that if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses because they didn't have the automobile in their perception. So I keep getting a little pushback that, well, if we ask the user, and I said, no, okay, well, we can ask them through feedback, or we can maybe use more observation methods. So that's why I found that one, to start talking about how we can observe and different methods to observe, and what's the difference between observation and asking. So those are some things that inspire me to go look for a resource I can share with them instead of trying to write a book myself.
The other thing that I was worried you thought that meant was if you ask the user, then they want a survey.
Right.
Like or a focus group. Maybe we need a focus group. So there's these certain user techniques that a lot of people are familiar with. They've been used in the advertising world for a jillion years. But UX is different from marketing and advertising in some important ways. And what we do is study what people actually do and not what they say they intend to do or say that they would do. And those are very different things. It's one of the reasons that analytics is so important, because if you ask people what they would do in a situation, they'll take a stab at it, but they're not privy to all the context around when they might actually need to go pay a parking ticket, right? Or, report a dog barking. These are two issues that the city of San Antonio has to respond to. So if you ask them, how would you want to be able to say that? Sometimes elderly people would assume that they wouldn't want to do something online, but they have more tolerance of that than you might think. Or one of the things that comes up for elderly people is that Alexa, I have a friend that works at, used to work on the Alexa team at Amazon, and they didn't know how useful Alexa was going to be for elderly people. But because it's a voice interface, it's even easier than Siri and, the Google Assistant. And if the city decided to report an issue available on Alexa, that might be a game changer for elderly people. And it's still a digital experience.
Right. And that type of, channel shifting or optional ways of starting a process or even finishing a process are something that we are, talking about. And I know there's a team that actually has Alexa and is examining how they might start using it in some of these contexts. So, and I think the other important thing when you were mentioning, observation users either have a hard time articulating. There's another study that shows they often will tell you what they think you want to know or what they feel a peer group would want to hear or what they should say. So those things all kind of bias the conversation, right? And they also have, if you ask them, you can't ask them what their mental model is. They've never tried to most likely identify a mental model or how they think about the world or how they operate. So all these things are important. Observation can help you get to that root of the problem and not always the symptoms and not always the expectations or assumptions, right?
Right. So user interviews are often very useful. And what we do is give the user a task and say, if you were, and Zoom is a wonderful tool for user interviews because we get to see whether they're on their phone or their desktop. If we give them a scenario, there's a dog that's just barking incessantly, behind your house or your apartment, and you need to know
what can you do about it?
What can you do about it? So you have to present them with that to understand what their current mental model is. It's a weird game of withholding information that you likely know, but that you just say, there's a barking dog, what do you do? so you need to hear, do they even think that they should talk to the city? Because they might think that they need to talk to the county or the sheriff or the, the neighborhood association or whatever. You don't know. And it's very easy to lead people. The survey design is a similar problem set that, and I know you've seen these kinds of surveys that are leading by the way they ask the question. They're trying to stack the answer in a way, or sometimes it's unintentional. They are going to stack an answer in a way just by the order of the questions, sometimes stacks an answer. So user interviews, if you do them with a usability expert who's good at not leading the witness, as it were, you can learn all kinds of stuff. It's time consuming, but the beautiful thing is you can study a few different types of people, go for diversity, and then you uncover issues. And then when you start uncovering the same issues across diverse participants, then you've got enough to go forward.
I just had this conversation with our chief data officer about, he just wants people to stop doing surveys unless they have an expert in statistics and behavioral sciences, right? Because they're stacking the question, and if they're making decisions, budget decisions with millions of dollars based on a couple surveys, he was just kind of tearing his hair out and wanting to change that use of those really standard methods. At the same time, we're trying to push this user-centered design where we need to ask questions, but we really need to consider how we ask those questions or how we make those observations, So,
and go ahead.
No, I think it was interesting when you brought up the dog barking, and I just recently explored this for myself. So most people would think that's an animal care issue, but actually it comes down to code compliance because it's a city noise ordinance issue, not an animal issue.
Not unless it's howling in pain or starving,
right. Unless it's a pain
or whatever,
being abused or something like that, then it becomes an animal care issue. So very, very interesting. And that's one of the hardest things with the city, and also the mix of county and federal and state is people, and you guys, I say you guys, Firecat and Red Square did some work for the city and found, people really don't understand who does what, and they just assume, they just start with the city because it's local. And even for driver's license, well, that's state. Or for there's a pothole in I-10, well, that's federal. But they don't know that. So part of it is trying to get people to where they need to go.
Right. So you told me something really interesting right before we lit up the webinar, and that is that the government agencies are starting to partner together to take care of that issue. Can you talk a little bit about that, or is that secret or something?
Well, I don't. I think it's. I'm trying to think what's been said and that type of thing. But there are partnerships happening, which is really helpful. And the one we were talking about was in security, where there is interoperability. Oops, I can't say that word today. No, between SAWS, CPS, because a lot of people think SAWS and CPS belong to the city.
SAWS, if you're not from San Antonio, it's San Antonio Water Systems, and it's a government-ish agency that provides clean drinking water
too. Right, and CPS is the electric agency for electricity. And then so SAWS, CPS, the city, the county, and the fusion center, and that's a police and other federal or agency, and
kind of sounds like an app smasher.
I know, public safety enforcement agencies working together. And so this is all in the security to share information and try to solve big problems, faster, and especially in emergency situations. So that's really interesting. And then of course the city's always had we work with, there's 25, okay, I don't know, cities within the boundaries of San Antonio. And some of them use, of course, a lot of them have their own police departments, but they might use the courts, or they might use other, cooperative types of arrangements. between these cities. And I was just talking with Susan, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a UX cooperative arrangements, right? Because some of these smaller cities may not have resources to really make their services user-centered. You know, they're going off old experiences and ways of doing it, and opinion design, right?
Right. Let's see. Do anybody have any other resources? And if you come across new resources, please let us know. Chris has just given me a wonderful idea. Let's find just a place on the Firecat site under resources somewhere where we can just keep this updated and make sure the bit.ly link always links to this thing. And then we can just keep it up to date, and everybody can submit stuff and have it be a community resource that's valuable for everybody.
Yeah, I love it.
Yay. If nobody has any other observations or questions about the list itself, I would like to make a couple of announcements. As you may know, I am involved with lots of different nonprofit activity in San Antonio, one of which is UX San Antonio. It's a group of professionals, either early in their careers thinking about becoming involved with UX, but we have free virtual events multiple times a month. So those are good learning opportunities too. We do Firecat First Friday on the first Friday of every month. So I invite you to come back to January. Sometimes we skip January because it's either on the New Year's Day or too close to it. But in this case, we're well away from the first of the year. So we'll have some good stuff coming to you next year. It will be 2022 before we know it. And the other two nonprofit items I would like to announce while I've got you here. We're doing a TED. I'm a co-founder and organizer of TEDx San Antonio. Chris is on the executive team for that too. We are having a TED Women watch party tomorrow morning from 10 to noon. TED Women is a big TED conference. It costs many thousands of dollars to attend. And because we have a TEDx San Antonio license, we get a license to stream some of the talks or to you guys for free virtually. That's tomorrow, 10 a.m. to noon Central US time. And then on the 18th, which is also a Saturday, we are having a TED Circles event. That's where, if you've ever thought, you can watch a TED Talk anytime. And it's fun. It's a 15-ish minutes and get some new thoughts in your head and sort of stimulate yourself. But it's sort of isolating. So if you watch one, you don't have anybody to talk about it with unless you want to go in and comment somewhere about it or share it in social media. TED has created a new program-ish called TED Circles, and we have a TED Circles community group happening. So on the 18th, we will be watching talks in the theme of exploration. And then it's small group, and we do breakout rooms or sessions like this where we're all together and talk about the talks. So it's not so sterile and content consumption mode. You're actually actively talking about this with other people in the community, have different takes on it, different ideas, different backgrounds. So it's especially refreshing with everybody doing distancing and remote. So I've been hungry to talk to other people and discuss ideas, and this has been a wonderful way for us to do that. So if you go to tedxsanantonio.com, there's a link to go register for the TED Women that's tomorrow and the TED Circles on the 18th.
And those are a lot of fun. I've participated in, what was it, a couple of years ago, a year ago? Now I forget which ones, but yeah.
And Louise, you put a link here at
yes.
HFI. Tell us about that one.
HFI. So that's where we've been getting some our training, and I know USA also utilizes them. So Human Factors International, they've been doing a CUA certified usability analyst, and now they have a CXA certified wait, I got that wrong. Anyway, certified usability analyst and certified UX analyst. So, but they're doing free, they were doing conferences for their CWAs for people certified, but now they've opened it up. So it's a free 1-day UX conference, and I'm going to be doing a version of this talk there, right? So talking about resources and the whole idea of the adopt and adapt. So I wanted to let you guys know about that, and you know, a fun resource too. So
I'll be sure and share that with the UX San Antonio people.
oh, cool, great.
Great. So I am very interested in what other UX topics, usability topics, facilitation. We do a lot of workshopping and facilitation. If you have ideas on information that you'd like us to cover in Firecat First Friday, or you know somebody you'd love to hear from, an expert that I can invite, would love to hear from you on that. My email is susan@firecatstudio.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. I invite you guys to connect, and I'll connect back with you. And I'm thinking we should just wrap this up early and give you back a couple of minutes.
Well, I must say thank you, Susan, for doing these Firecat Fridays, because I've really enjoyed them. It's been fun to talk on one, but I've also enjoyed being on the other end of being a participant and watching them, because they've been really useful, and I try to promote them to my folks at the city.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
so
get
much.
some really great, smart people, including you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your information. And we will see you the first Friday of January, if not before. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.